Hello, everyone, and welcome to Wind, Reel, and Print. My name is Kevin.
And my name is Ryan.
And today...
Sounds like an NPR episode.
Yeah. And today, we are talking about a classic movie for me. It was very important to my cinema brain growing session that is growing up.
For context, when is that?
Yeah, so this movie came out in, I think, 2007,
yes.
Right? So I was 15. And the
Nice.
movie we're talking about is There Will Be Blood.
Oh, yeah.
Paul Thomas Anderson's Western probably isn't the right...
They say Western, but period piece I feel like is more accurate.
About a man named Daniel Plainview, who is an oil man.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't start that way, but becomes an oil man and then also begins to see the folly of capitalism and some of this early capitalism. This all takes place in the early 1900s and what the power of greed does to a person, and money, and you even throw in a little bit of religion in it too. And I think for me at the age when I saw this...
Are you religious?
I grew up like Christian adjacent. Like we would go to church and things like that. I know it's a weird thing to say, but it was never like, no saying prayers before dinner or anything. I think there probably was when I was earlier, maybe a little bit of that.
Sure.
No, I am not religious. And at this time I was like really not religious. Like, cause I think a part of especially growing
15
up.
15 is like sophomore year.
Yeah. I was definitely like pushing kind of the boundaries on who I was, my identity, and definitely atheism was that thing. And I was always, I was that kid that was like,
God's not real.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I look back now and I'm like, oh God, that's so annoying. But it was also an important part of me growing up. And now I'm more agnostic.
Okay. Yeah. That was my next
because
question.
I've kind of come to the conclusion that you can't really know. We only have so many senses. Like it's kind of crazy to think that anything is a certain way, or that you can definitively say there isn't a thing or whatever. Sure. I have a hard time believing in like really like strict interpretations like the Bible or stuff like that, because they feel very like human adjacent, like like they're very just like human centric. Sure. And I just think that that's just not the way. And I think we've gone through this on the podcast. That's not how I see things. Right. I'm very like natural and everything like that. So
you're a 10 holes kind of guy.
What the hell does that mean?
I forget who said it. I'm quoting someone, but it's like a metaphor for like, I guess, religious faith, like a metaphor for faith of like, you can either dig 10 holes 1 foot deep, or you can dig 1 hole 10 feet deep. And just in terms of like understanding the world, and I think the context was through religion. Like you can understand certain, like all the religions and get like a certain depth to it, or you can learn one and have like a deeper relationship with it. But it's like a different value kind of system, so to speak. You could say the same for like films, like rewatching and watching, watching 100 movies one time, or watching one movie 100 times, or 10 movies 10 times, or something like that. Yeah.
The one thing we can be sure of in this life is that time is short, and you really only have enough time to do certain amounts of things, decide on certain directions to go, and at a certain point you let the dice fall where they may.
What is time?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm not the person to answer that.
Yeah. It's but a thing.
It is a thing, and we are so desperate to try to control it. Yeah. Talk about just like something we talk about a lot.
Yeah. I'm losing time.
I'm losing.
Yeah.
But so this movie, I saw it in the theaters and it blew my mind. It was also like the first, like, I would say like artistic movie that I watched. Like something where it was like, I mean, I think I'd probably seen, because this was probably around the time I was just kind of really getting into kind of different movies, Wes Anderson movies, and things where it was like, oh, whoa, this looks strikingly different than like.
Because what's your context of films?
Yeah,
before this era.
Yeah, I mean, before this era was like, obviously all the Disney movies. We had them all on VHS and things like that. So it was always like a catalog of all of these VHS tapes of like those. I think that I was also, just in terms of like different media, I think I was starting to get into like Futurama and The Simpsons and things like that too. So those are like, and also like probably Family Guy even a bit back then too.
Sure.
Like, so pop culture context and stuff, it was something I was starting to understand a little bit more.
Right.
It was also like, I also didn't even really get into music until I was like in middle school.
Yeah.
Like I didn't, that was when I got like an iPod, and
nice.
that's kind of when a lot of things, I was kind of throwing a lot of these things in there.
Yeah.
So we can kind of say what's kind of going. And then I kind of started watching music videos too, and it was like,
yep.
Oh, whoa. You know,
what was your thing?
What do you mean?
Music videos.
Oh, like what was the
what were you watching?
Oh, Missy Elliott.
Sick.
Black Eyed Peas.
Nice.
I'm thinking of like The Killers and...
Nice. Got some good shit.
Yeah, so...
Great Christian band.
What is The Killers?
Yeah, they're a Christian band.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's interesting. Yeah. Oh, wow.
They sing about Jesus.
Oh, you're talking about that one song?
I mean, a lot of them.
Oh,
I think they're kind of known for that.
Oh, wow. I did not know that.
Yeah. They might be like a Mormon or something. I forget.
Interesting.
Yeah. There's some stuff going on.
Yeah. Yeah, I think about this because someone I knew in high school tried to get me to join their Christian band.
Nice. Yeah, that's
as
awesome.
A drummer. Yeah, and they recommended As I Lay Dying. I don't know if you know that band.
No, I don't.
Yeah. It's like because for me, Screamo was like a really big genre growing up.
Sure.
Because a lot of like people in drumline and stuff, because I was in drumline, a lot of those...
They liked Screamo?
Yeah, that was like... And they were in Screamo bands.
What?
And I was going to like Screamo shows and things like that.
That says a lot.
Yeah, and Atreyu went to
Atreyu!
Yeah, went to my high school.
Wow.
And so there was like this big...
I grew up on that shit.
Yeah. So
at the same time as you, or
no, before.
Okay.
Yeah, just a few years before.
I see.
Well, we never crossed paths, so it was probably pre-2006.
Sure.
But
breathing the same air.
Yeah, the same air as Atreyu, and then like we were in a Seosin and
Hawthorne Heights.
A few other things, but
sure.
Yeah, so. That's cool. We're talking about like, and then obviously another, like you had all those kind of Disney movies, but then you had like Star Wars was a thing,
right.
Like Jurassic Park and all of the associated properties
stuff,
and those sorts of things. All kind of like those early superhero films like
right.
X-Men, Spider-Man, all of those things.
Yeah, I could see how this like is a big contrast to that branding of film.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And I'll also say Lord of the Rings and The Matrix. Matrix was also like, I saw that pretty
opening
early.
Things for you.
Like that was one of the first DVDs we ever had, and I just found it in a cabinet. My dad had bought it at some point.
Sure.
And
it's like those turning red bowls.
Turning red bowls?
Yeah.
I don't know what that is.
Those bowls turning red.
Turning red bowls that I have. Yes,
yeah.
For the movie Turning Red.
Yeah.
I see. Sometimes you find hidden things in your house, and you're like, "What the heck?"
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that was kind of like, whoa, that.
Yeah.
And then the sequels and the Animatrix. So, kind of coming in with all that stuff, and then basically it was like a double hitter with There Will Be Blood and No Country for Old Men, both coming out similar, and it was like, this is crazy. Oh yeah, Oh Brother Art, that was an early movie for me, and I think I probably even watched Boogie Nights before There Will Be Blood.
Cool.
And that was like very formative. I'd never it was a very sexual movie.
Yeah.
I watched it on TV. Like I was just kind of going through channels.
Star.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so that at that age, you guys can imagine, I was going through it.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like very special to me.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. Boobies.
Yeah.
So I watched it and it blew my mind. Like the use of music alone.
That's a big thing for me.
Is wild.
Yeah.
And
just drives the whole thing.
Yeah, it felt like the perfect movie to kind of, you were able to point out things about a movie. Like the cinematography is very clear. The music is very clear. The characterizations are very clear.
I mean, you always talk about like you don't really notice it unless it slaps you in the face.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is what this movie is.
It absolutely does.
It's like, this is forefronted like everything about the film is like in your face sort of a thing.
And Paul Thomas Anderson is one of those directors, and he's a good director because there is purpose behind everything.
Absolutely.
When you watch it, you can trust, like, oh, I can think that this was intentional because it probably was.
For sure, yeah.
Which I always really appreciate that when it's like, okay, I know there's even more to this than I'm even catching on the surface.
Sure, yeah. It definitely like rewards a rewatch, like with how much layering he's adding into it and like all this stuff. Do you watch a lot of his movies? Because I haven't really seen that many PTA films, and I really want to, but I think I've only seen like this and The Master.
Wow.
Yeah, I haven't really seen.
You've never seen Boogie Nights?
Haven't seen Boogie Nights. I want to see Magnolia. I want to watch Phantom Thread. I want to watch like all these
Licorice
movies.
Pizza. I'm surprised you didn't see Licorice Pizza.
Yeah, just like not
on your radar.
I just like ended up not watching it. I think I missed that window or whatever. But yeah, I just like haven't really engaged with the. So when Criterion put that little playlist up, I was like, I haven't really, but I want to go into it and watch like his stuff.
Yeah, and I will say Boogie Nights is in my top 10.
Okay.
I love that movie. I think it just
because it's so good, or because of the childhood thing, or both, or
it's
you're like, nah, it's fucking.
It's great. It's wonderful. I mean, I think if we're talking about, and I think something Paul Thomas Anderson does really well is he can tell an epic story over decades.
Sure. Oh, okay.
And this movie does a really great job of that.
Yeah.
I think both ends. It's very tight in the middle, relatively.
Boogie Nights.
Huh?
Boogie
no,
Nights,
there will be blood. And there's basically kind of like big time jumps on either end.
Sure, yeah.
Of it. Boogie Nights is, we're moving through the decades of the porn industry in California.
Sure.
And so you've got kind of the up, and then you have the really far down.
Yeah.
And Mark Wahlberg just giving one of the, maybe the best performance of his career.
Sure. Dang.
John C. Reilly was great too.
Over Ted?
Over Ted.
I'm just kidding.
No, not over Ted.
I feel like top 10.
Yeah, top 10. Ted is 10. Ted is top 10. I forget what I was going with that. But yeah, so
sorry to throw you off.
But I have seen all but one Paul Thomas Anderson movie.
Wow.
I just haven't seen his first one, Hard 8.
Hard 8, yeah.
I've
heard that one's good.
Yeah, I've heard good things.
He hasn't made that many, right? He's like
I think maybe 10 altogether, maybe less.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3.
He's counting.
9. And then one coming out next year with Leo.
Yes.
Oh, that's the one in.
That's the one that shot in Eureka. For a bit. Yeah. So that
looks
should be good.
Cool. I love Leonardo DiCaprio. He's my favorite actor.
Yeah, I think Paul Thomas Anderson and Leonardo DiCaprio is
that's a fucked up situation,
that's a
bro.
great combination.
How have we not had that yet?
I know, it's kind of wild.
It's pretty crazy, yeah.
Because we got Joaquin Phoenix with Paul Thomas Anderson.
Yep, got Tom Cruise.
Yep.
Yeah.
I feel like
Mark
the
Wahlberg.
actors that come into Paul Thomas Anderson's orbit, they just spring to life. Yeah, exactly. It's just like there's just so much room in these performances.
Yeah.
And
Adam Sandler.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We're talking about like
some of the best actors
doing something very different than what they usually do.
Yeah. I just love The Master for Joaquin, and Philip Seymour Hoffman. It's just the whole cast kind of too. It's just.
I think incredible. The Master is underrated. Yeah. I think there isn't enough talk about it.
Yeah.
I think it is so good. And it just blew my socks off. And that's another epic, too. That's another really told over decades.
Bay Area movie. I put it on the list.
Oh, I watched it before I was in the Bay, so I never really thought about that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's San Francisco and stuff.
That's cool. But yeah, that one just has a great dreamy quality to it.
The film, whatever, stock.
Oh, it's so good. Yeah, the performances are great, and music is great, and
the imagery.
Yeah, and talk about just back to back. There Will Be Blood, then The Master.
Oh shit!
After I'd seen There Will Be Blood and saw The Master in theaters, I was just like, this is crazy. This guy just doesn't miss.
Yeah. Kind of great.
Yeah, and then Boogie Nights, Magnolia are also my other two really big favorites.
Okay.
Of his.
I've seen Punch Drunk Love.
Yeah, and I have his one. Yeah,
okay.
I do like that.
So
one.
I've seen 3 of his.
Yeah. Things, yeah. But let's go back to the film at hand, There Will Be Blood. One of the great mustaches in all of cinema. You have to respect the Plainview stache. I wouldn't be here where I am without that stache.
Okay, what are your thoughts on method acting?
Well, I think step one of method acting is to grow a good stache. I think that's great.
Yeah, there's a visual portion. Ryan has
yes.
an amazing stash right now. Yeah.
There is. I definitely, my stash is
modeled after the Plainview.
That. It was modeled after Robert Pattinson in The Lighthouse, and you can kind of see I am attracted
to that
aesthetic.
Yeah.
But method acting is interesting because I feel like I always try to put myself in the director's shoes a lot of times to kind of think, because it's so interesting, all of the different things happening around a director on a film set that influence the film more than any, like in a lot of ways, I guess is a better way to put it. And as regular watchers, you don't really think that. You kind of think like the director did everything a lot of times, or the actors did everything.
Right.
And I think method acting is, for me, it sounds so scary from a director's standpoint. It's kind of like it's letting the dog off the leash a little bit and like trusting that it's going to behave. And it's kind of just letting and making sure you are where you need to be and being kind of predictive.
Right.
Daniel Day-Lewis, obviously infamous method actor.
Right.
And I think in this one, I just think method acting allows for very engaging performances from a viewing standpoint.
Sure.
But it also just, I think, I don't know. There's a rawness that sometimes that can feel performative in other cases. That the Adam Drivers, the Robert Pattinsons, even the Tilda Swintons, because I think Tilda Swinton also gets kind of weird with it.
Sure.
Though I don't know enough about if she method acts.
I don't know.
But I mean, she's certainly she's
crazy.
Yeah, no, she's crazy.
In a good way.
I like Tilda Swinton.
Yeah, I love her too.
Yeah.
She's great.
So that's kind of my kind of like upper level thought. What about you?
Are Adam Driver and Robert Pattinson?
Robert Pattinson is I guess what is method acting in a way?
It is a style.
Yeah, because I mean, Robert Pattinson is definitely on the spectrum of.
He's on the spectrum.
On the spectrum, and Adam Driver too. I think they're both like the first take is the best take because it's the most raw version.
Okay.
And it's the least. That's at least what Robert Pattinson says.
Okay.
And it's kind of gets to something that you can't get, like that. Performing it multiple times can sometimes, I mean, it depends. I think people work in different ways in this. Mm-hmm. So maybe multiple takes can, like Martin Scorsese is infamous for having a lot of takes.
Yeah.
David Fincher, obviously.
Noah Baumbach.
Noah Baumbach.
Yeah.
Stanley Kubrick.
Kubi. Yeah, yep. Obviously.
And so we have like an infamous many takers.
Right.
While Robert Pattinson is a...
fresh.
Yeah, is like...
I think actors tend to have that vibe though. Yeah.
And I definitely get it. I guess I'm conflating that a little bit with method acting a little bit, because there's like a quality to... Oh, wait. Oh, no. I'm remembering a Leonardo DiCaprio quote now about working on Gangs of New York and walking by Daniel Day-Lewis in character and being like, oh, I guess we're doing this.
Yeah, it's real. Yeah,
it's real. So maybe Daniel Day-Lewis is
it's a different
more,
thing.
Yeah, that's even more so. That's even deeper than even the examples I'm giving.
Well, because method is what Daniel Day-Lewis is, where it's like you just become the character at all times. Like that's maybe an over-exaggeration of the style, but that's in basic like what that method style is asking you to do as an actor.
Yeah.
And it tends to like be so like when I was in film school, I had a teacher, shout out Tracy Ward, who is like an actor, kind of theater teacher centric in terms of style and everything. And she was our directing teacher. And so she would teach us like the basics of how to speak certain languages. And she would always preach that method acting is the most like dangerous style because it puts the actor at risk of like just mental, disfiguration, so to speak. And when you look at some of the best method actors like Philip Seymour Hoffman and Heath Ledger,
yes,
we're considering people who have passed away because of their acting.
Yeah.
And so you have to look at that and be like, hey, the numbers are saying it's not looking bright, you know? And so, and there is that one quote, I forget who it was, but it was like someone on a movie doing some weird shit. And then,
there's Jim Carrey in Man on the Moon.
Yeah. That's
Andy Kaufman. Like, and he literally thought Kaufman was like,
let me finish my quote.
Okay.
It was just
I
like,
was helping you.
No, there was a guy who was like doing weird shit. And then someone else said like, how about you just try acting?
Oh, I see.
In terms of like, you don't need this, like all this fluff of like method, and it's like kind of extra and like kind of stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, Jim Carrey in that movie is like one of the biggest examples because it's so like publicized, that film, like with the documentary too, which I've seen, but I haven't seen the movie. Just like him in being this character, and to me it's scary too. Just like as a viewer, it's like, man, you're kind of like doing weird shit. There's that story of what's his name? Dustin Hoffman slapping someone. I think it was Meryl Streep or someone.
Oh.
Like in a movie, and it was just like, what the fuck, dude? Or
yeah.
like, this is so unnecessary.
Yeah, that's not. Oh yeah, there was actually something that happened with Winona Ryder as well in like an early movie with someone.
Gary Oldman.
Gary Oldman. Yeah. And was like, and I think that was actually that was Dracula, Francis Ford Coppola.
Yeah.
And Gary Oldman being another method actor.
Right.
Yeah. So method acting is mental.
Slightly problematic, but I don't know. Yeah, this guy gets a lot of praise for it, right? I don't know.
Yeah, maybe it's just because there is, I haven't heard. Maybe it hasn't bubbled up to the surface just how toxic making this movie in particular was. I at least don't know of the instances.
Sure.
But I imagine there's just a toxicity that kind of comes with it too.
Yeah.
I mean, to be on set with Daniel Plainview, like that guy's not a good guy.
This guy was an asshole.
Yeah, he's a bad guy.
Yeah.
Especially the end. Can you imagine filming those scenes?
Right.
With Daniel Day-Lewis as Daniel Plainview?
Dude.
I mean, he was like... to be Paul Dano in that bowling alley must have been scary.
Shitless, yeah.
Oh, and you can tell. I mean, maybe it also plays.
That was real.
Yeah, that's very like because I'm looking at Daniel Day-Lewis throwing those pins, and I'm getting scared.
Right.
I'm genuinely terrified.
Yeah, anxiety is like.
And I think me growing up, obviously, I didn't have all this knowledge and all this history to even know what was happening.
Sure. Yeah.
But man, I certainly could feel the visceralness of it, and I think that's what comes through the most.
Yeah. Like you said, it's the most fruitful for the audience.
Yeah.
In terms of like how much is just right there.
It's like watching football players fucking
Duke
break
it out.
their skulls.
Yeah.
For our entertainment. You know, it kind of feels like that in a way.
It's brutal. Yeah.
Gladiator battles.
Yeah.
Sort of thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Violence.
It's
the theme of the day.
Yeah. Violence.
Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, capitalist violence, right, is like kind of the theme of this thing.
Yes.
It's pretty like harsh and scathing.
Yeah.
Scathing.
And how it just melts everything good about you.
Yeah.
Because like for Daniel Plainview, he has one good characteristic, and that he loves his son. At least for some time, he and maybe it's because he's using it.
Child.
Yeah, maybe it's all of these things.
Right.
For a while, you can tell there's like a genuine this is his friend. Even like when they're out hunting quail and stuff like that, like secretly like really looking for oil on this person's property, there is like this. That's the only redeeming quality that Daniel.
Sure.
Plainview. And also when he decides to, I think her name is Mary, help the little girl Mary, names the well after her because...
one that died or something?
No, because HW, the son, basically said like, Mary is, her dad hits her. And he's like, we're going to make sure that doesn't happen anymore. And
Sure.
there was that moment at the table outside when he's like, Daniel Plainview is there with the little girl. And he's like, your daddy's not hitting you anymore, is he? And she's like, no. And she's like, okay, go be a good girl. Oh, I actually got his voice pretty good. And then walks away, and then we see Abel. Oh no, I think it's Abel is the father.
Yeah.
And they have like this look, but
Right.
Obviously Daniel Plainview is doing that as a means to control the people around him.
For sure.
I think there is an aspect, but still, HW, his son, was like his goodness. It was
Right.
like the one crystalline thing that he had, and you could tell when he goes deaf, from the oil derrick exploding. Yeah. So already Daniel Plainview's own thing that he does has made his son deaf.
Right.
You get this moment when he's like sending him off to like unwillingly sending, or it's the child that doesn't want to do it.
Yeah.
But obviously Daniel wants him to, but sends his son off to a school for the deaf.
Right.
And I felt like watching as Daniel walks away from the train, you could see like, it's almost like he's going to cry. It's like the only time in the movie, like he's really thinking about crying.
Yeah.
And he can't look up. He can't, like, he is just, it's not like business as usual, like standing up straight. You could tell there's a torture. And when I watched it again, it just felt like the last thing that he had within him melted away, and now he was like the truest form
of evil.
In a lot of ways.
Nothing holding him to the ground anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And it wouldn't take much to send him off.
Right.
And then eventually he continues down that path.
Sure, yeah.
So that was just a very interesting scene where it just felt like, wow, that was just a really powerful thing that I finally caught onto on this watch.
How many times have you seen this movie?
HW. Oh man, probably 10, 12 times. But I hadn't seen it in a long time. It's been, I don't even know if I've watched it since I've been up in the Bay Area, which is 2016.
Okay, wow.
So I watched it just
damn near 10
over
years.
and over and over. Yeah, it's been a really long time.
Yeah.
Because there's just
over
something,
and over.
Yeah.
Over.
And I know you and I have differences in opinion, and I think I'm changing as we keep doing this podcast.
On rewatching?
And rewatching. Like, because for me, there's something that I don't like about going back, which I think is always, when you don't want to do something, that's always something to explore.
Sure.
And there was even like a time I didn't want to go back to like where I went to college, like for a period of time, because I'm just like, the
door's closed.
The door is closed, but then there's also like nostalgia is like so powerful of a drug almost that like the memory hits harder than the movie ever could in some ways. And so there's like a part that's like, I don't want to go back because I don't want to experience it I don't want new Ryan to experience it.
Sure.
I like what old Ryan experienced. And I think we talk outside of the podcast about Moby Dick.
Yeah.
Their old Ryan really liked it. New Ryan doesn't. And I think as I'm trying to kind of like read it again, I'm just like, dang, my kind of new context really don't care for it in some ways, but the idea of it is what I love.
Yeah. That's what you make the movie about.
I know. Yeah. Where the Wine Reel and Print produced Moby Dick adjacent whale hunting adventure.
No, you can say adaptation.
Yeah. You think you can say adaptation when it's like super loose?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Loose adaptation.
Oh yeah, I guess that's a perfect. Oil by Upton Sinclair has none of this in it.
Exactly.
Yeah. This is very loose based upon
the book.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like just taking bits and pieces and then making it your own.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the best adaptations, Yeah. And that's actually a great maybe segue into Upton Sinclair, because I think he's an interesting like source point to a lot of the film's like messages and themes, especially with capitalism.
Yeah.
And like these kind of robber baron men, in this culture that we created, because he was a muckraker.
Yeah.
Which I just read. Super interesting. Wrote a book about like the
meat plants.
Yep.
It's called The Jungle. For those of you that haven't.
Have you read it?
I have.
Is it good? Is it? Oh, you have it?
Yeah. It is. It's wild. It's interesting because it's like a fictionalized version of the truth.
Yeah.
So he does he takes what he learned in the real world as a journalist and then turns it into fiction, which is a really cool way to do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, happy to let you check it out if you're ever interested. But Upton Sinclair,
I'll check it out. Yeah.
Yeah, was, for those that don't know, obviously was a muckrake, but also ran as a socialist for governor of California.
Yep.
For those of you that have seen Mank at all, that takes place during that time. Upton Sinclair's
in the movie
election. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So you watch it.
Yeah, exactly. And so he's a very interesting figure, very prominent socialist, workers-centric person. Eugene Debs, also kind of around a little bit earlier than this.
Nice.
But yeah, no, very, very interesting perspective. And yeah, this movie plays into it. I think that it is such a clear critique on capitalism. Yeah, There Will Be Blood. There certainly is no looking away from that. I think
it's not subtle.
it certainly is not subtle. You can clearly see more money brings more problems.
Yeah.
Scathing. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, like, it's also a movie where, I mean, we're following an anti-hero, which works very well for this sort of story. And it is not a happy ending at the end.
Nope. Pretty
unless you like
horrifying.
You know, you could spin it as like HW when he comes back, he finally he finally knows there's nothing left. And can now be his own full-fledged individual, or whatever. But that's really reaching for some happy ending.
Yeah.
And that's even before the actual ending, which is I'm done. When he beats up Paul Dano with the bowling pin.
Oh, that's what I thought you were talking about.
No. I was talking about HW walking away.
Oh, okay.
When they're talking, and he's bastard in a basket. Bastard in a basket.
From the court thing, or
I don't think it wasn't in court. It was in his like office.
Oh, okay.
There's a scene where HW comes back. That's what the big time jump is there.
Oh,
and he's there with his interpreter.
And he wants to leave and shit.
Yep. And he's like, I want to start my own oil business. I want to do all these things. And
he's
then
like, you're a competitor.
Yeah, now. He's like, and then he's just like so mean.
Yeah.
So mean.
Just like.
Oh my God. And you just like
Leonard.
Yeah. My cat. It does feel kind of fitting a little bit because he pulled a little bit of a Daniel Plainview today.
Right. Just like something triggers it, and they snap back to the original, what you said, like the baseline kind of treatment. And that's what's so like awful about watching this movie. It's like, oh, you so close to reaching a level of humanity, but like something just pulls you right back, and you can't like let yourself have that moment anymore. It's like, that's
And so there's another interesting thing about this film is that it is very religious too. Like there's a whole religious angle to it. And there's like the classic poster where the oil derrick has a cross built into it. And so I maybe I'll throw it back at you a little bit. Like, what do you seeing those two things? What do you think how do you think the movie does it? And what are your thoughts on it? Generally?
I mean, to me, it's like American Andrei Rublev in terms of like showing the relationship between capitalism and art, or especially religion and art, I guess showing the relationship between capitalism and religion.
Yeah.
And like how so much of that is imbued in American culture, especially considering this is like a proto-capitalism sort of situation. And I think it is interesting how like you see corruption at different levels, within the community, and like how much religion is tied into that, I guess. Yeah.
And Paul Dano's character, one of two characters, he plays twins.
Right.
We only see the twin right at the beginning, which was so
odd. I never remember that, but
it's
super funny.
Yeah, it's very funny because you also see like on Daniel Plainview's face when he sees him he's like, what the?
Yeah.
Like really thinks it's him for a second.
Right.
And that's a great moment because you just know, there's just so much
subtext. Yeah.
And then, I think some of the best movies, obviously, are the ones that the characters do not say what they actually feel. Those are always the best.
Yep.
But it's interesting because Paul Dano's character in it, he is also not a good guy.
Right.
Really not a good guy. Like,
Yeah.
he is using it as a way to
Position himself
up in his family too. Like,
Right.
he is a hateful person,
Right.
who is also trying to exert some kind of control
Right.
in the community.
Sure.
And
Like young white men in America today.
America, number one single.
I mean, just that idea of like someone feeling they've been wronged or mistreated and like need to like exert their authority or
Yeah.
power.
I also love that this movie, in terms of religion, like makes it feel like Daniel Plainview is cursed, you know, like
Right.
that he didn't get the blessing on the thing. So all of these things
Are happening now, yeah.
because of that.
Sure, yeah.
And I think that's an interesting way to look at it too. Is
Right.
like, if he had just done that, would it all have
Right.
all have been well? You know, I don't necessarily think that's true. But
I mean, there is I feel like the thread in it is like the kind of, there is a spirituality to the film, I feel like, especially with that scene of him like admitting to giving up his child and
Yeah.
stuff. There is a big, I feel like, revelation happening in that for him, you know, just like going through all that at a personal level and stuff.
yes,
Yeah, like you said, the blessing and the thing. That's why I feel like this is the bell maker story in Andrei Rublev is like basically what this whole movie is like operating at that level of like, can he, can't he, and that tie, like trying to be a god and like trying to reach salvation. I feel like these are all things worked into the like dough of this film. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Something I wrote down in my notes, and I don't usually take notes, folks, but
nice. It felt good enough.
It felt right to do it.
Yeah. Let's hear it.
Talking about baptism scenes.
Wow.
There's both of our leads get baptized.
Yes.
You could say. Obviously, there's a very clear one of Daniel Day-Lewis getting baptized.
Like, literally.
Yeah, literally being baptized in the church, being slapped.
Right.
Admitting that he has left his child, giving up all of his sins and laughing at a certain point.
Right.
At just the ridiculousness of it all.
Right.
But then you have, it was before that scene, you have Paul Dano's character being baptized in oil. Because Daniel he's basically coming to be like, hey, you know, maybe asking for some sort of church-related thing. I can't remember exactly.
Yeah,
but
the $10,000 or something.
Daniel Plainview's son just recently became deaf, and so he blames in some ways this on
Dano,
because he's been talking about how like they're spending too much time at the church and all of these things. Like there's a number of things happening, and throws him in a pit of oil and then just starts throwing it on his face and rubbing it in his hair and slapping him
in front of other people.
Yeah, in front of other people. Yeah. It's so disrespectful and gross. And then the next scene after that is Paul Dano's character like
putting that back on him, basically.
I was going to say that the literal next scene is him at the dinner table with his family. And he's just the oil and mud is baked on his skin and it's all hard, and he is now the most raw kind of evil form of himself.
Sure.
Everything has been thrown away and like runs across the table to choke his own dad.
Right. Like, you did this to us. This is your fault.
Yes. Yeah. And it also just shows that the buck never, like, where does the buck stop? It stops at like whoever
controls it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like the bully bullies the bully, bullies the bully, bullies the bully sort of thing over and endlessly until there's one victim that just can't do anything.
Right.
Yeah, and I guess there's a lot of just like exerting control on the people around you. You get that from Paul Dano's character, you get that from the dad, you get that from Daniel Day-Lewis, you get it from all of these things of just like, I want something. And even you could say HW as well, like trying to like do, like he does not trust the brother that comes in who is lying that he is Daniel Day-Lewis's brother, and tries to kill him. Right. Just sends a fire all the way through and it's one of those things. And, you can wonder if it's just like what made him do it. But there's also like this this idea that he knows, and that
Right.
he can't say, no one will even listen to him
Right.
on anything anymore. So
Yeah.
and that was obviously the final straw before they sent him away.
Yeah. Control is another great theme in this.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Domination, control.
Yeah.
All the way to the end, and maybe that's also kind of like the very interesting thing about HW finally walking away is that's also some kind of control.
Right. Of yourself.
Of
and
yourself,
your own thing,
of your own universe. What you actually have the ability to touch, is yourself, and that's the ultimate win.
Yeah.
It's finding peace within yourself and not letting anyone else control that aspect of you.
Sure. So how does this relate to your ideas with rewatching now?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that, there still is a part of me that's like, dang, there's so many movies to watch. I really want to watch more movies I've never seen. But there is, I do, and I think it's the podcast, watching movies now does more.
Yeah.
Maybe it didn't do more a year ago or whatever.
Sure.
That I think, I am very interested to go back to some of the ones I remember really fondly and being like, okay, let's see how this feels.
Yeah.
Now let's try it on for size again. And I think a lot of Paul Thomas Anderson movies, I'd feel that way about.
Sure.
I haven't seen Magnolia in a long time. It's been a little bit since I've seen Boogie Nights, but I have watched it fairly recently, and it still bangs.
Nice.
But yeah, there's a lot of Paul Thomas, like Inherent Vice. I really want to watch that again. Phantom Thread. Punch Drunk Love. I really don't remember much of that. Magnolia. So yeah, there's a lot to go back on. And I think I feel the same way about Stanley Kubrick too, because Stanley Kubrick was also like, that was one of the first directors that I like that made sense to me.
Yeah.
Like 2001, Clockwork Orange. That was also kind of around this time. I was like really like being like, whoa, this is it. This is what a movie is. Like, and Paul Thomas Anderson gets it too. Like he knows cinematic language in a very similar way.
For sure.
And so Stanley Kubrick movies, there's a number of Stanley Kubrick movies I really want to go back to. Full Metal Jacket being one of them.
Yeah.
Clockwork Orange. Dr. Strangelove. It's been a long time since I've been there. But definitely want to go back. So yeah, no, I'm feeling it cool off, melt away a little bit.
Sure, yeah.
My hesitancy to jump back in the ring with some of my old favorites.
Sure, yeah.
But
jump back in the ring.
Jump back in the ring.
Yeah.
Because it is, it's like a little...
It is a battle,
yeah. It's...
Or it is a tussle.
Yeah, exactly.
You're kind of wrestling with it, right? It's
wrestling, I think, is a better way to put it.
Yeah.
It's nothing... There's nothing, like, inherently, like, seriously violent about it in some ways, but it is just like a... I'm good. I want to
struggle against.
Yeah, exactly. And then you throw me off balance, and then all of these things. It's kind of more of a balance game.
It's a dance. Yeah. That's why it just keeps going. Never really
finishes. Because there's nothing worse than a movie that you just look at,
right?
And you don't get anything out of, and it's just like.
I'd say it's like soil.
Yeah.
You want something fertile and like rich.
Yep.
Has a lot of nutrients, and you can keep going back to it and find stuff and grow and get high yield out of it and stuff. If you can't like really dissect it and go that far into it, it's like probably not a good movie.
Yeah. Fully agree.
Yeah.
Is there, you got anything else on your shindiggy?
No, I feel like we talked about everything I want to talk about.
Cool.
Yeah, I feel like it's a good movie. Watch it. It's fun.
Yeah.
Oh, well, Control, I feel like, is a good theme for Paul Thomas Anderson, because I feel like that's his like mode of filmmaking, is like he has to control everything.
He is very much
top to bottom,
Absolutely, yeah. He's got that. I don't think he goes as far as Steven Soderbergh does, but we're talking about someone that they're involved in every aspect of it.
And you feel presence just like in every the editing, the camera work, the music, like you said. The music to me is like
all of his movies.
Holy shit, Johnny Greenwood, he's just like, I love Johnny Greenwood's movies. Or the stuff that he scores, it's kind of great.
Yeah.
He did Power of the Dog.
Oh my God, that's great.
Yeah.
Very adjacent in terms of just like this
tone and
of just like toxic masculinity as well. A little bit of just like absolutely having to dominate your own emotions. Controlling your own emotions to the point of that you are poisoned and that your core falls out from inside of you and you are just a husk.
Yeah.
And then that makes you more, and I think it's insulting to say animalistic in a way because I love animals, but it is just like stripping away one of the unique things about being human, which is like this elevated consciousness that we have.
Perceived,
yes.
Yeah.
By our own self, which is also like another
thing,
a complicated thing. Of course, we're going to think so high of our own,
right. Consciously, yeah. No, I feel like, these are all great. I mean, to tie masculinity into capitalism, into religion, like I think these are all good things. You know, entrepreneurship. You know, it's like I feel like these are all ideas that are related in some way and like speak to our society now. And it still feels just as relevant as ever, right?
Which is maybe a bummer.
But I mean, it's so great. I feel like this era of America is so like relatable to today.
Yeah.
You know, just thematically. It's based in California, you know, too. So having something in this era, I think, is like an interesting
I think this era of California and in America is just it's so rife and ripe with possibility.
Right.
I go crazy for it. It's one of my favorite time periods. Is kind of like late 1800s, early 1900s America.
Oh yeah.
That's what gets the goiter going.
Yeah. I mean, in the world, it's just like that's the like you got spot. Everything going on. You know? Yeah.
Technology is just hitting. Movies are just starting. I think that's also like things are changing at a rapid pace. You have the 1920s that kind of like is kind of like the final
modernism.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of like, and then the 30s and especially World War II is when everything changes.
Yeah, that's like the beginning of the new age.
Exactly, like. and that's when it's not as fun anymore. Because
you still have old world stuff in that era.
Yeah, not everything is connected yet.
Yeah,
you know, you could probably go to even like old world in terms of even like you could go to another country and it's different. Things aren't so connected. And then World War II is the octopus that consumes everything. Yeah. And American
it truly brings
hegemony.
Everything together. Yeah. Yeah.
Hegemony. Thank you all for listening.
Yeah.
And
come back next time.
We'll be here. Yeah. We're not going anywhere. All right. See you later. That's a wrap.
Bye.
Bye.
Wind Reel in Print is a podcast by Salad Brain Productions. You can find us on Instagram at Wind Reel in Print Pod. You can also find us wherever you get your podcasts. And please, if you like the show, leave a rating and review. We'll see you next time.